The Buddha versus Nihilism: How to Find Purpose in the Void. Once the Blessed One was staying near Siṁsapā in the Siṁsapā forest. Then, picking up a few Siṁsapā leaves with his hand, he asked the monks, "What do you think, monks? Which are more numerous, the few Siṁsapā leaves in my hand, or those overhead in the Siṁsapā forest?" "The leaves in the hand of the Blessed One are few in number, Lord. Those overhead in the forest are far more numerous. In the same way, monks, those things that I have known with direct knowledge but have not taught are far more numerous than what I have taught. And why haven't I taught them? Because they are not connected with the goal, do not relate to the rudiments of the holy life, and do not lead to disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to stilling, to direct knowledge, to self-awakening, to unbinding. That is why I haven't taught them. And what have I taught? This is stress. This is the origination of stress. This is the cessation of stress. This is the path of practice leading to the cessation of stress. This is what I have taught. And why have I taught these things? Because they are connected with the goal, relate to the rudiments of the holy life, and lead to disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to stilling, to direct knowledge, to self-awakening, to unbinding. This is why I have taught them. Therefore, your duty is the contemplation. This is stress. This is the origination of stress. This is the cessation of stress. Your duty is the contemplation. This is the path of practice leading to the cessation of stress. Siṁsapā leaves, Siṁsapā Sutta, SN 5631. Meaning in a meaningless universe. Sometimes people hearing these passages ask, then why did he talk about rebirth? Why did he talk about the many levels of the cosmos? Why did he talk about the history of the cosmos? There are two main reasons. One is that he shows all the different ways in which we can suffer. If death were simply the end, there wouldn't be much we'd have to do. But it's not the end. As long as there's craving and clinging, the mind is going to keep on wanting to come back. And it can come back to all kinds of places. The moment when you leave the body, you're pretty desperate. You're being pushed out. It's like being evicted from a house that's falling down on you. You look and see whatever is available in the market, and you go to whatever seems likely. The range of likely things may not be all that wide or all that good. The other reason, though, is that when you look at the Buddha's description of the many cycles of the cosmos, you see that they don't go anywhere. They evolve and then they devolve, and then they evolve again and devolve again. It becomes pretty obvious that this is a universe without a purpose. A lot of people find that thought chilling, but it's directly related to the issue of suffering. If this universe had a purpose, and your suffering were part of the purpose of the universe, there'd be no way out. You'd have to continue suffering. But here, there's no purpose, so you're free. If you want to put an end to suffering and the Buddha has found a way, there's nobody to say no. Now this means no more rebirth. But again, look around at what the options are. I was talking with an artist one time. She was saying that she knew that someday her art was going to be destroyed because everything was going to blow up when the sun went nova. But she said, well, maybe I've rearranged a few atoms and it'll be a little bit different in the nova. Which seems a pretty depressing thought. If you look outside in the world for your meaning, it's doing everything it can to say no, no, no. Then you look at the various levels of rebirth. We live in a world where people feed on other beings, and other beings feed on other beings. You wonder what kind of purpose that serves. Look at nature documentaries. I saw one a while back. These huge bats in Australia have no way of drinking water except for getting the fur of their chest wet and then licking the water there. So every day they have to go down to a river and skim across the water to get the fur of their chest wet. Then they go back, sit on a branch, and lick off the water. The problem is, The river is full of crocodiles. So every day, just to get a drink of water, the bats have to risk death. When you see their efforts to get away from the crocodiles, it's pretty dismaying. Then you look at stars and planets forming and then blowing up. Where are you going to go to find any meaning or purpose in this? There's nothing there. What kind of accomplishments do you want to make? The things you work on can easily get snuffed out, which is why it makes all the sense in the world to look inside, to work on your own mind. Why is it that the mind wants to keep coming back? If this were all there were, we'd say, well, just put up with it. But the Buddha says, there's more, there's better, there's an escape, and it's the highest possible happiness because it's outside of space, outside of time, and it's not touched by the evolution and de-evolution of the cosmos. It's totally free. So of all the various purposes that you can make for your life, and that's the whole point, that you can decide for your own purpose, you can decide your own meaning, that would be the best. It's simply a question of developing the qualities of mind needed to get there. That's what the perfections are all about. If you look at the accomplishments of your life in terms of the mark that you've left behind, there are all too many things out there that are willing and eager to erase that mark. But the qualities you build into your mind, nobody else can take those away. Someone once asked a John Moon if virtue was somehow separate from your mind. He replied, "How could it be? Your virtue is in your intentions, and your intentions are definitely part of your own mind. And if your virtue could be separated from your mind, people would do just that. They'd come and steal your virtues. But because they can't be separated, there's no way it can be stolen. You're the only one who can destroy your virtue. Why would you want to do that? So think about the qualities you want to build in life. The 10 paramis or perfections give you a list. There's generosity, virtue, renunciation, discernment, persistence, endurance, truth, determination, goodwill, and equanimity. These are the qualities that the tradition has said lead to awakening. It's not a list you'll find in anything attributed to the Buddha directly. It comes from the Jataka tales, which were later compilations. But they're all qualities that the Buddha himself, at one point or another, would recommend. And it's a good list to measure yourself against. Which of those are you lacking in? Persistence, endurance. Those are the ones we tend to be weak in. But they all come under determination. In other words, you realize that your mind has lots of random desires. Some of them pull in a direction you want to go, and others pull in another direction that another part of you wants to go. But all too often, the decision is simply made on the basis of urges, thoughts that come into the mind and then go. You want to sit down and think about it. Where do you really want to go? What do you really want to accomplish inside? Then you make up your mind that that's going to be your overriding resolve. That determination is a promise you make to yourself. Then you want to stick with it. Make sure that other desires that go against it don't have any force against it, don't override it. But it is your choice. That's the important thing. So take some time to think. What would you like to accomplish in this lifetime? Specifically, what would you like to accomplish in the training of the mind, understanding the mind? One of the reasons we meditate is because we don't really understand our minds. We need to look at them to see how they process things coming in through the senses. If they process them in a way based on ignorance, it's going to lead to suffering. If you decide to take the Buddha's path, you start out with conviction in the Four Noble Truths, and you try to apply that. That turns everything into the path. When the path really comes together, it leads to something that is beyond. You have your first taste that it really is true what the Buddha said. There is this dimension outside of space, outside of time, and it really is the highest happiness. That's something the mind can do. So think about how you live your life in relationship to that fact or that possibility. At the moment, for you, it's just a possibility. But it is a possibility. Don't listen to the people who say it's impossible, because what do they know? They've never tried. But remember, the purpose of your life is something you decide. So before you make your determination on what your purpose is going to be, give it a lot of thought. If you're not sure, tell yourself, I want to understand my mind first. That's a good start. Understand how it creates suffering. Understand how it can go about not creating suffering. That's a good purpose to try out, because as the Buddha said, with that kind of intention, you can go all the way, which is why he taught just that handful of leaves. Take good aim. The Buddha compares the discernment that comes from meditation to the skills of being a good archer. You're able to shoot long distances, fire accurate shots in rapid succession, and pierce great masses. In other words, you see the long-term results of what you're doing, or of different possible courses of action, so that you can choose which is going to be the best in the long term. That's like shooting great distances. Firing accurate shots in rapid succession means being very clear about what's going on in the mind, moment to moment, and especially clear about when suffering is arising there, how it's arising, and how it can be brought to an end. Because the mind can change so quickly, you want to be able to see it very quickly. Piercing great masses means piercing the mass of ignorance. Now, in general, to be a good archer, you have to have a really good, concentrated mind. For your aim to be good, you have to be able to stare at the target for long periods of time without wavering, without blinking. It's similar to the quality of mind that makes a good potter. I was watching a potter one time in Thailand as he made a pot on a wheel. I said to him, "You must have good concentration." He said, "Your mind has to be constant. In other words, you can't waver." This is one of the reasons why we're working on concentration, to develop that steady, constant, unwavering quality of focus that enables our discernment to do its work. And what is the work of discernment? To understand our cravings. As we chanted just now, the mind is usually a slave to craving. We're slaves to cravings because we don't understand them. We haven't pierced them. We haven't watched them quickly or carefully as they change. So, often, we misunderstand our own cravings. Sometimes we become a person we don't even recognize. A certain craving takes over, and as the Buddha says, craving leads to becoming. And what is becoming? It's the act of creating an identity in a certain world of experience, or taking on an identity based on your desires. The identity here is either the you who's going to enjoy the results of the desire, or the you who's going to be able to produce those results. This is why the Buddha has us ask every day, days and nights fly past, fly past. What am I becoming right now? Whatever you're becoming, it grows out of your desires and your cravings. And if you don't know them, then even what you are flies out of your control. Sometimes people come asking, "Who am I?" That's the big spiritual question we're told. Or, what's the purpose of life? What's the meaning of life? And the Buddhist answer is, basically, you are what you define yourself to be, and your purpose in life is what you decide it's going to be. There's no overarching purpose to the universe. Remember the Buddha's vision of the universe. It just keeps going through many cycles, around and around and around. It goes nowhere. And the beings within the universe go around and around too. They wander here and there, but keep coming back and then going on, and keep coming back again. If they don't get out, they don't go anywhere, either. And as for what you are, that keeps changing in line with your desires. Now, some people find this scary, but the Buddha saw it as an opportunity. You can define your desires in such a way that you give your own meaning to your life. A meaning that's good. If there were an overall purpose to the universe, you'd have to serve that purpose regardless of what that purpose meant in terms of your health, well-being, and happiness. The question of putting an end to your suffering would have to be put off to the side because you'd have to serve some other purpose. But with the universe being meaningless, you can give meaning to your life by saying, I'm going to put an end to suffering. Then you can define yourself around that. Make that your desire, because it's a noble desire. You'll find, of course, that some members of the Committee of the Mind have lots of other desires as well, most of which are based on very strange ideas of what's possible in the world. Now, you can't simply make up your mind about the way things are going to be. You can't make up your mind say that you're going to be a sex addict and have perfect happiness too. The universe doesn't work that way. Your mind doesn't work that way. This is why we have the teachings on the principles of action, to remind ourselves this is how things work. If you act on this kind of desire or this kind of motivation, it's going to have these kinds of results. If you have that kind of intention and act on it, it'll have those kinds of results. The Buddha lays it all out, and then says it's up to us. Which do you want to choose? The other thing he lays out is what's possible. In the example of his life, he shows that it is possible to put an end to suffering, and you can do it in a way that doesn't harm anyone else. In fact, when you look at his life, you can see that he created a lot of good for the world. He set out the Dhamma to show people how they can put an end to their own suffering. He created a monastic order so that this skill could be taught from generation to generation as a living apprenticeship. He did a lot of work to show us. This is what human beings can do. So it's good that we keep that in mind, because the rest of the world wants to close off a lot of options, and not only the world outside of the Dhamma, but also the world of what passes for Buddhism here in the West. A lot of the teachers are trying to close off the options that the Buddha opened up. Fortunately, you can't close them. For people who are looking for them, they're still there, and you have the opportunity to define yourself. What are you becoming right now? When you make up your mind that you want to put an end to suffering, you have to deal with the other yous in there that are created around different desires. This is why we have to fire shots in rapid succession and be accurate, because our cravings are very subtle and quick. All too often, you may think you desire one thing or have a craving for one thing, but then when you get it, you realize that's not what you wanted. If you're lusting for a particular person, say, you think that the person is the object of your desire, but if you get the person, things often don't go the way you thought they would. This is not the person I thought I was getting. This is not the story I was imagining. So you have to look back again. What was it that you were actually desiring? What was your craving really aimed at? These things shift very quickly. The narrative you had, the fantasies you had. What exactly got you interested? What was the hook? A perception? A feeling? How did they get associated with that person? The same with anger. You're angry because things are a certain way and you want them to change. Well, suppose you actually got them to change. You might find that that doesn't really satisfy you. There was something else that you wanted. And so, here you are, being defined by your desires, and you don't even know what your desires are aimed at or where they actually lead. So we get the mind really quiet to see these shifts in the desire. Ajahn Mahabua talks about this. He contemplated the foulness of the body as a way of overcoming lust. He got so that he was really quick at it. But then he realized that the problem wasn't with the object. There was something in his mind that liked the perception of beauty. The problem wasn't the body of this person or that person out there. It was his being hooked on the perception of beauty, something totally internal. Think about this for a minute. We create lots of havoc, not only in our own lives, but also in the lives of others, simply because we don't even know what our desires are. We think we want something and we find out, well, that's not what I want, and we want to throw it away. We barge through life like this, creating huge messes. So, getting to know your own desires and gaining some control over them requires sitting down very quietly with a mind that's steady and solid and looking at what you really want in life. You've got the choice. Choose your desires well so that you create good becomings. Ultimately, of course, as the Buddha said, the best thing to do is to go beyond becoming this person or becoming that person. With arahants, as he said, you can't define them because people define themselves around their desires and their attachments, whereas someone who has no desires, no attachments, because they've found true happiness, can't be defined. As far as they're concerned, the question of who they are is a non-question. The question of what happiness can be found in the context of worlds is a non-question. And as for purpose in life, they've achieved that purpose. They have no further purposes for their own sake. Their only remaining purposes center on helping others in their quest for their highest purpose. We're not there yet. We're still on the path, but the good news is that we get to choose our purpose. The bad news is we get to choose our purpose. In other words, if we're really sloppy in our choices, as they say, be careful what you want because you might get it. So you want to train yourself, both in terms of the concentration that sees things steadily and the discernment that shoots great distances, seeing clearly that if I choose this course of action, this is where it's really going to go. This is the discernment that helps to get you past the usual muddled perceptions where you think, well, I think I might want this person, or I think I want this situation, and you try to get it and it doesn't turn out to be what you thought it was, or it was what you thought it was, but you really had other ideas in mind. You were actually fixated on something else. In this way, the ability to fire shots in rapid succession actually connects with that ability to shoot great distances and to pierce great masses. You break through your ignorance so that you see the long-term results of quick changes in the mind, and you clean up your own life. You give it a good direction, and you stop making a mess of other people's lives. This is why this is a good path. It's good, not only for you, but also for the people around you, that you're following this path. So try to take advantage of the freedom you have. You get to define yourself. You get to define the purpose of your life. Keep the Buddha's options in mind as to what the possibilities are and make the best choices you can.